Hey, good morning everybody and welcome back to this week's show. We are up on my favorite place. I grew up here, the Wolf River. It is the spring walleye run, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to an absolutely awesome day. Today we're stopping at Ma's Bait Shop here in Fremont. It's so important to support these local shops. Hey, let's go inside, talk to Dan, see what's going on. I'm pumped up. It's gonna be a great day. Hang on to your hindies. You know, how long has this shop actually been here? I mean, I've been coming in here since I've been a kid, right?
I believe it's opened in 1979.
79, huh? Boy, big part that's changed these bait shops is the highway does not go through here anymore, the main highway. You yourself and the last owner basically started doing taxidermy work really to kind of balance things out a little bit during that slow time. When you're coming into an area, instead of bringing bait with you, really try to support the local bait shop.
We appreciate that, and we really do.
Hey, scoop me some minnows, my friend, so I can get out and do some fishing.
Yep.
Get him. There you go. Got him. Keep him on. It took a little bit, but here's our first fish on. Had a couple other bites. Nice fish, real nice fish. We took Dominic out of school today. Nice fish right there. Gotta like that, old Dominic.
Dominic 1, Lance and Larry 0.
Yep, that's typical, par for
Yep.
the course. Nice job. You're not gonna say much, huh? Say anything
Listening
about
to Larry all morning, I won't say much either.
Really?
Dominic.
Come on. Here we go. Yep. You know, I went with a heavier jig too, and it's all, yep, there it is. It's all about control. That's the biggest thing. And when you're pumping jigs, to me, it's one of my favorite ways to fish this time of year, because it's not like you're drifting with a boatload of people and you're going down the river and you're constantly snagged all the time. It's just such an easier way, and I think it's more relaxing, but it's very, very effective. There's a nice walleye. There we go, Lance, nice job. You know, so far the two walleyes we got are all really nice fish. When you think about this, you know, these are all 16 to 17-ish inch fish right there. Kind of a patient thing. Sometimes you come out and you smack them right away, but what's happening again is these fish are actually moving up river. So everything from the lakes down below is moving up. Just if you have the patience, sit in a spot. This time of year, I typically like to do the outside bends, and most of the time our water is super high and I'm way up in the trees, and I kind of work my way out as the morning progresses, because them fish will be in 1 foot to 2 feet of water in the morning early like this. And then what happens is you get a lot of boat traffic. You know what, the fish start pushing on a little bit deeper, and you just kind of keep moving your boat out a little bit deeper. But let's catch a few more fish and we'll go over some other things. But again, it's a very relaxing way to fish and very effective. What I'm using here is I've got super braid on here. I've got about a 2-foot leader on here. The water's dirty. I don't think the length of the leader really matters, but being able to control that jig is everything. I went with a 3/8 just to be able to get that jig down there, and I can still slip that jig back a little bit. If I pump it real hard, I can walk it back just a couple of feet at a time like that, which works out good. Hooking the minnow really is a key thing too. So put a squeeze on the minnow, it opens its mouth up. I try to get that hook placement as far back as I can and kind of push up on it. The nice part about like these Google-Eye jigs is they've got a little wire keeper on the bottom, and it'll keep that minnow forward like that.
Come on, Dominic. Good job, buddy.
Woo-hoo! Things are lighting up. I love this. Hear that? Now, this time of year, you can get some giant fish because you think all the big females are coming up too, along with the males. So really take it easy. You got a lot of current down there. And when they do come up to the top, I typically don't like their mouth up on top. I will slide the rod down, and so right now you're straight up. So if that fish does come up, yep, try to keep them underneath the surface, because it's too easy for them to shake their head. And it's a walleye. I was just trying to give them a little, I was trying to throw them off a little bit. It's a nice fish, man. I knew we took this kid out of school. Oh, there he goes, come off. That's okay, because that was a big female. We would have let her go anyways. That was about a 20-incher, big female. You could see the belly on her, but you could see what happened there. You know what? Obviously, he's super excited to try to get that fish into the boat, but the thing is that head came up on that fish and shook it a couple times and poop, off they are. So I always try to tilt that rod to keep that rod down so they can't throw that hook so easy. There we go. Hit it 3 times and finally got him. I was having problems. I was getting short bit all the time, and they just didn't like what was going on. I went with that Pendu jig, and using something like that Pendu jig, where it really allows that bait to float more natural, can really make a night and day difference. Now let me show you guys. If you haven't seen this jig, so nice fish right there. Basically what it does is it allows that minnow in that current to basically float up and down. So when you're pumping that jig like that, that minnow goes up instead of staying right into the mud itself. So it allows that minnow to float a little bit more freely. And I love that little hook, that little keeper on the bottom right there, because it keeps that minnow up forward. And again, it allows me so I don't have to use a stinger hook, because these fish are hitting so light. They're not like coming up and just clubbing it. The water's still really cold. And again, just doing something a little bit different is definitely putting more fish in the boat. Dominic, I'm tied with you. Dominic, you gonna net this for the Lance?
He better, not you.
Huh?
Better let Dominic, not you.
Well, you don't trust me?
Well,
Lance, you don't trust me at the net? Nice job, Dominic.
good job, Dominic.
Nice job, Lance. You know, that's the whole thing about this type of fishing too. It really, time of day doesn't really matter, you know. These fish are on the move up, and they're all nice fish. We haven't seen a small fish yet today.
Looking for a good eater?
I'll take that one any day of the week. There you go, nice job. You know, basically just working the edge of them current seams is definitely the key, but you gotta be able to feel that bottom, right? So if your jig is constantly, you're letting more and more and more line out, you gotta go with a heavier jig. Now he's got a 3/8 on there because he's on the outside where the current's a little stronger. I've got a 1/4 on this side. Anywhere from a 6.5 to 7 foot 2 rod is about the perfect length. Using 10-pound test,
Solid.
super braid, and then of course a fluorocarbon leader. And I don't really know if it's necessary for that, but having a good swivel is probably the most important part versus having that carbon leader in there. You know, this time of year you got such a great chance of, you know, seeing a big fish, you know, that 7 to 8, 9, 10 pounder. There's a few 10 pounders on the Winnebago system.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. Yeah, I saw him.
Keep that rod tip down until I tell Larry that we're ready to pull up.
And that's key right there, exactly what Lance said, because that fish, that head comes up, man. They shake a couple times, they're gone. And not overwinding it either is key right there. Nice deal. That's a nice fish right there. Let's talk about some of the key things when it comes to anchoring up or spot locking and working these fish as they're moving upstream here. The most important part is make sure you got a really good swivel in there, because when you're pumping like that, you get a lot of line twist in there. And if you don't have that swivel in there, when you go to stall that bait or when you drop that bait back, no doubt that bait is going to be spinning and spinning like that. So it's not going to come down natural like a minnow would naturally come down. So that's definitely one of the key things, is again to make sure you guys have that good swivel in there, good ball bearing swivel in there to prevent that from happening. When you're looking at a year like this year and the water levels right now are low, and you know that can change, 1 or 2 really good rains can bring these rivers up. There's still some frost in the ground, so a lot of that moisture is going to funnel right in here. But this is how I work it. When it's a low water year like it is this year, typically I'm using most of the inside turns where that water is typically a little bit deeper. The fish like to stay in that deeper water for sure when it's like this, when the water's lower. But when that water comes up and it gets high and it's flooded into the timber, That's my favorite time. Then the outside bends are definitely the key places where I start off. And a lot of times in the morning, what I'll do is I'll actually get right up into the timber. As long as there's flow going through that timber, the fish will be there, especially early in the mornings and in the evenings. And a lot of times, you know, anywhere from like 2 to 4 feet of water is the prime depth for them fish. Now I'll work it a little bit differently then. That's the time when most of the time when I'm throwing my jig back there and pumping it, I'm usually using a 16th to an 1/8 ounce jig. And here's a real big key. Don't use a super braid then. Go strictly mono, because what it's gonna do, it's because you're in such shallow water, it's gonna allow that jig to fall a little bit slower, but yet you're still gonna have good bottom contact. Work in that shallower water where the current isn't as strong too. Just using a rod that's got straight mono on it, still with a ball bearing swivel in there, still with a swivel in there, is gonna make a big difference for you guys catching a lot more fish while these fish are coming upstream. So let's talk about color and jig style. You know, when you're pumping jigs, color can be really a key factor, you know, anytime. But the way I kind of always work it, early in the morning, I kind of go to the darker colors. And then as it gets lighter, brighter out, I kind of switch over to brighter colors. It's just, for me, seems to work out a lot better. And when you're dealing with really dirty water, one of the things that I like to do, especially after you get a really good rain and everything's really dirtied up, is go with some type of plastics on there and a minnow. Basically what that's allowing you to do, and you're having more vibration going through that water and obviously a little bit more flash. That can make a huge difference too when you're working these fish pumping jigs behind the boat. You know, one of the ways that I think people can obviously catch more fish in the spring, especially when these cold water temperatures like this, is to use some type of scent. And, you know, Doctor's Juice, it just seems like on this body of water, the Wolf River system, Green Bay, really seems to make a difference. And basically, you don't really need a lot of it. It's very important. This stuff is like almost like glue, and it's really hard to get off. So when you do put it on, you can buy a pump bottle like this, and it'll last you maybe about 3 or 4 times, and it clogs up in the whole head right there. So basically, just taking the cap off of it and just taking that dropper and just, you know, rubbing it on that minnow is key right there. Try not to get it on the boat. Try not to get it on your hands, because the stuff really stays on, and it really has a smell to it like that. But again, you know, just that little bit of extra scent, I think, makes a big difference, because this time of year the fish aren't as aggressive and they come up behind that bait, and a lot of times they'll just sit there and watch that bait, and they get that right scent to them, and a lot of times that can get them fish to trigger. Just try it on one rod, and I'll guarantee you probably put it on everybody's rod in the boat.
There's it.
There he goes. Nice job. Nice job.
That's a Walter.
Lance has always got to get the last one. Don't scoop them hard, just nice and gentle. Perfect. Nice. Well, Lance, you're the first one to reach your limit today, right? Dominic, we're not leaving until you get yours, so it could be.
Wake up and get in gear.
I'll be sleeping.
It could be
sleeping.
No, there'll be no sleeping.
No sleeping when you're with Larry.
Nope, no sleeping. Hey everybody, this week's tip of the week brought to you by our good friends up at Mike's Country Meats, the finest jerky on the planet. Hey, I'll tell you what a great tip I have this week. I've been using this Real Magic for quite a few years now, and it's one of them kind of things where it definitely helps try to keep the line twist out of your reel. I'll tell you, it's definitely well worth putting a shot of this on every morning. Hey, again, this week's tip of the week brought to you by our good friends up in Tigerton, Mike's Country Meats. It's a walleye.
Nice walleye.
That's a nice walleye. Yep. Dang it, I was hoping it was a sucker.
We'll leave them for you, Larry.
All right, appreciate that, Lance. Another
females
females, yep. And it's hard to tell somebody they got to let them go, but you know what? You know in your mind that it's the right thing to do, right? So
you're allowed to keep them, but
yep, I know it's
we catch enough fish that we're gonna let these go.
Right. That's why, you know, realistically, you know, when you're fishing and you see somebody catch a female and it's, you know, that you would have let it go, you really can't say anything to anybody because they're not really breaking the law. Just, you know what, do your thing. You know what, we're gonna let all these females go. And it's, you know, just that's our right, you know, and your right is if you want to keep it, you can keep it. You know, I think most,
Here we go. Got him.
good eater. I think we got a good eater finally. You know, that's the thing too about this is that sometimes it's just a timing thing, right? You know, these fish are moving up, working their way up towards the top side of the system. And that's, again, right there, that's a nice, perfect fish to eat right there. Lance, what do you got going there? It looks like a good fish.
We're not going to know until we can prove it.
Yep, maybe a big female. You know, it's amazing how things go. Like yesterday, like the schools were thick in here, right? And quite a few nice fish. Biggest ones were 24s, but them are dandies for this system. It certainly is good to see the amount of walleyes, and I would say our system is looking really good. And I mean, I think there's a lot of combinations why the system is so good. The walleyes for tomorrow, revamping the marshes, the main marshes up on the Wolf River here, and they've done some projects on the Fox too. I think that really makes a huge difference. You know, these clubs that are on the lake, no different than the clubs in the winter that do all the maintenance on the roads. There's about 4 or 5 main marshes on the Wolf River here and a bunch of secondary marshes that the fish will go into when you got high water. There he goes, Teddy's on fire. That's what makes it, this system so good, because it really, these fish have so many places to spawn. It makes a big difference. Another good one. No real big females so far, but these are all pretty good. That's a good male right there. You're beating Lance now.
I'm beating
Holy
Lance.
Man! Got him? Nice job, Lance. I'd like to see a little better one. Saw a lot of nice ones yesterday.
Another little male.
Okay. We're not complaining. Cool. Easy come, easy go. I never saw a fish.
Oh, of course you didn't see a fish.
You see a fish? The key to this whole thing is in making sure that you can find the bottom. And using a high-vis line obviously helps you a lot more when you don't have quite the feel. And sometimes that wind will really start messing with you, or just low light conditions. So that's another great reason to use some kind of high-vis line. The part two about this is you can kind of watch when we're pumping these jigs. We're following that bait back. So you give it a little bit of a pop forward and then you roll it back. And the slower you roll it back, and try not to get your lift too high in the water column, because that's going to help that'll push your jig downstream. And that's a lot of times what I'll do is I'll pump one spot for, you know, whatever, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then what I'll do is I'll lift real high, which will wash that jig back a foot or two. And so many times after you do that first or second pump, that's when you get bit, because a lot of times them walleyes are looking at it and all of a sudden that jig slides past them and they'll go downriver, come back at it, and then crack it. So it's always kind of nice to be able to have a jig that you can walk downriver but yet be able to maintain the bottom. And it really all depends on where you're at too. A lot of times, like Ted and I have a quarter on and Lance has got 3/8 on. So it really depends on where you're at in that water, in that seam that you're working, that current break. I'd like to kind of put the boat sideways, so I'll more anchor than anything, and then be able to slide back and forth, you know, either in or out on that current seam. And especially early in the morning, it always seems like, especially on the outside turns, because you're working a lot of shallower water and then you're working your way out to the deep water, that a lot of times early in the morning like that, they will be up super shallow in anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 feet of water. Then as the morning progresses, a little bit more noise, more light, then fish will actually slide down into the trough, and you know, that's where you're catching them. So by anchoring like that, if I anchor real shallow and anchor out in the center of the river, I can move my boat back and forth and kind of compensate of where these fish are moving to the time of morning.
Oh, yeah. Good enough for Lance.
I can't. There we go. Feels like a good one.
That's a good one.
That's the one we were looking for too. Gotta like that right there. Nice. Lance cleaned some fish the other day for Dominic, and saw a lot of baby perch, a lot of baby perch.
3-inch perch in it.
Yep, so that's great. I mean, like, when you think about the system right now and the amount of walleyes that are in the system and perch, it's absolutely phenomenal. Hopefully this system continues to stay healthy like it is, and things keep going in the right direction here. Big thing here is just to try to get that minnow. I always try to get it, or for the most part, it comes right straight through the center of that back right there.
Lance moved out, took my fish away from me. He didn't want nobody else to catch anything.
That's the problem with him, right? He's just can't stand seeing somebody else enjoy catching some fish. He's got to, like, especially if it's, it's a different story. Oh, there you go. You got clients. So don't let Lance know. That wasn't a fish. That wasn't a fish.
It was just a stick.
Yeah, just a stick.
Just a stick that time.
If they only knew how to set the hook, we'd probably have 25 in this boat by now. Somehow it's all Lance's fault. If Larry doesn't try to cross my lines, it's Teddy. Not only fighting the fish, fighting the competition.
A lot of complaining going on.
I'm not complaining.
Going on.
The only complaining I got is my gloves are getting wet from pulling all these fish off.
That is a good complaint. Hey everybody, what a couple amazing days we had in a row. And this week, using that Pendu jig definitely helped put a lot more fish in the boat. If you guys looking at booking a trip, give either Lance a call or give myself a call. Hey, also want to always thank our military men and women for the great service they have given this country and continue to give this country, along with all of our firefighters, paramedics, and no doubt all of our law enforcement agents. Hey, it is a great day to be alive, everybody. Can't wait to see you guys and gals again next week. Thanks for joining us.
Your face is next.